The first thing Elias Rain felt was the cold dot, not the kind of cold that prickled skin or tightened breath, but a deep, sterile cold, the kind that seeped into bones and whispered of metal and containment. He blinked, eyes adjusting to a glaring white ceiling, featureless and humming with faint mechanical life. The air smelled like disinfectant and artificial oxygen, and as he sat up slowly, a dull ache spread across his shoulders. The room was smooth, seamless, like it had been carved from a single synthetic block. No doors, no corners. Just white. Light poured from nowhere and everywhere. The floor felt strangely warm against his skin, a cruel contradiction to the rest of the chamber's clinical chill, and across from him, lying motionless, was her silver skin like moonlight reflected on water. Long limbs coiled like a sleeping predator's. Her hair shimmered with a faint lavender hue, fanned out beneath her head like a halo. She looked alien, beautiful, and terribly out of place, yet perfectly still. Panic gripped Elias for a moment. Was she dead? He moved slowly, cautiously, crawling across the floor until he was close enough to hear her breathing shallow but steady. Relief surged through him, chased quickly by confusion. Where was he? Who was she? And why were they here together? Then, a sound soft at first, like distant static. It built, forming syllables, and soon a voice echoed all around them. No speakers. Just presence. Species pair E47. Interbreeding viability test initiated. Mating required within 7 rotations to ensure continued life function. Monitoring begins now. Elias froze. What? He whispered aloud. The voice didn't repeat itself. He looked down at the woman, who now stirred, her violet eyes fluttering open. They landed on him instantly, unblinking, sharp. She said nothing, only scanned him, taking in his appearance, his posture, his fear. She sat up slowly, keeping her hands visible. A gesture of caution, perhaps peace. "I'm Elias," he said, voice dry. She tilted her head. No reaction. He pointed at himself, repeated slower, "Elias." A pause. Then she touched her own chest. "Tarena," she said. Her voice was low, musical, but firm. They sat in silence for a long moment, neither knowing what came next. A panel in the wall flickered to life, revealing 2 trays sliding forward. On them sat small portions of nutrient paste in a vial of clear fluid. It looked more like rations for a lab specimen than for living beings. Elias didn't touch it. Tarena stood slowly, taller than he'd expected, and approached the wall. She placed her hand against it, fingers splayed wide. Nothing happened. "They've sealed us in," Elias muttered. Tarena turned toward him. Her eyes narrowed. "You understand?" she asked, slowly, carefully forming the words. He nodded once, still trying to comprehend. "They want us to mate?" She didn't answer at first. Then she crossed the space between them in 2 quiet strides, leaned close enough that he could smell something wild and floral in her breath, and whispered, "If we mate, they'll let us go." Elias's heart thudded in his chest. There was no lust in her voice, no seduction, only cold, brutal clarity, and then a sound echoed behind the walls, an unmistakable hiss as the chamber sealed tighter. The air shifted, not in temperature, but in weight. The atmosphere inside the chamber became thicker, like the walls were closing in watching. A low hum, barely audible before, now pulsed beneath the floor, a steady heartbeat of the machine that held them captive. Elias backed away slowly from Tarena, his breath sharp and uneven. She hadn't moved since she whispered the words, "If we mate, they'll let us go." She simply watched him with those violet eyes, her expression unreadable, like a statue carved from living light. But something behind her eyes trembled. She wasn't as calm as she seemed. Elias broke the silence first. That's not a choice, he said quietly, shaking his head. That's a violation of both of us. Tirena blinked slowly. Yes, she said. But the chamber doesn't care. They both turned to the ceiling, or rather, the void where the voice had come from. It hadn't returned since the announcement, but its presence still loomed, invisible and absolute. Elias began to pace the perimeter of the room, tapping the walls with his knuckles, searching for seams, vents, anything. But the surface was smooth, flawless, like glass fused with bone. It was a cage built by something that understood how to make prisoners feel freedom was impossible. Tirena crouched near the food tray, picking up one of the nutrient packs. She sniffed it once, grimaced, then ate without hesitation. Elias stopped pacing. You've done this before. She looked up, chewing. I've survived something like it. Not this exactly, but close. He crouched beside her, suddenly more afraid of what she wasn't saying. You were taken by them before? She nodded, slow and bitter. Not me, my sister. Elias's stomach twisted. Tirena didn't elaborate, and he didn't ask. The silence was its own story. Then, the voice returned, biometric syncing incomplete, cortical stress rising, compliance rate below threshold, initiating environmental pressure escalation. A hiss. The ceiling lights shifted, bright white becoming a sickly, burning orange. The walls warmed. Not dangerously yet, but enough to make skin sweat and breath quicken. The hum beneath the floor became a pulse, rhythmic and calculating. They're trying to make us desperate, Elias muttered. Like animals. Tirena stood, her spine straight. We are not animals. Not. Unless we let them define what this is. He looked up at her, so tall, so alien, and yet somehow familiar now. Then what do we do? She approached him slowly, deliberately. We outlast them. That is what warriors do. And if we can't? He asked. Tirena hesitated, her jaw clenched. Then she turned and walked to the far side of the chamber, where she dropped to her knees and began to draw something on the floor using residue from the nutrient paste careful lines, circles, ancient symbols that shimmered with faint heat. What is that? Elias asked. War record, she said. A prayer, a memory. My people mark the space we may die in. Elias sat beside her. I don't want to die here. Then we fight differently, Tirena said. We don't give them the bond they want. We give them something real. He furrowed his brow. What does that mean? It means we survive not by surrendering to their terms, but by choosing our own. Before Elias could respond, a new tone pierced the air, shrill, urgent. A wall suddenly shifted, becoming transparent for the first time. Behind the glass, another chamber revealed itself. Two beings, one human, one insectoid, lay motionless on the ground. A red symbol flashed above their bodies. Failed coupling. Specimen 51A and 51B terminated. Elias stared at the corpses, bile rising in his throat. They're killing the ones who don't comply. Tirena didn't look away. No, they're killing the ones who don't connect. That was the failure. Not sex. Not instinct. The bond must be true. He turned to her, his voice hollow. How do you know? She looked at him, then really looked at him. Because my sister's bond was real, and they still called it a failure. Elias sat back against the wall, trembling. The rules weren't rules. The captors weren't seeking data, they were seeking something else. Something intimate, something spiritual. Something they could not quantify. And somewhere in the floor, a countdown had already begun. The next cycle began not with sound, but with heat. It crept in as they slept, subtle at first, barely a whisper against the skin. Then it grew bolder, insistent. By the time Elias stirred, sweat beaded down his spine, soaking into the thin fabric. of his uniform. The air had thickened again, denser, wetter, until it clung to his lungs like syrup. He sat up gradually, head spinning, and instinctively looked across the room. Tyrrena was already awake. She stood with arms crossed, her silver skin gleaming like molten steel, expression hard as obsidian. A sheen of sweat coated her temples, but she didn't move, didn't blink. Her focus was pinned on the floor panel near the far corner. "Something's changed," she said flatly. Elias followed her gaze. A faint line now ran across the once seamless floor, almost invisible. A panel. It hadn't been there before. Before he could speak, a sudden click echoed through the chamber. The wall turned transparent again, but this time it wasn't a corpse that greeted them. In the next chamber, a young couple stood barely clothed, clearly panicked. One was human. The other was something almost translucent, with blue-hued skin and trembling wings that fluttered erratically. A robotic voice boomed above them. "Pair 32. Second attempt failed. Final integration in progress." Elias's stomach dropped. He and Tyrrena watched as a mechanical arm descended from the ceiling, holding 2 small vials of glowing liquid. The couple screamed, one in English, the other in an alien tongue. The vials were injected into their necks. Both dropped to the floor, convulsing violently. Elias slammed his fist against the wall. "They're forcing it, chemically. They're trying to create ... something else." Tyrrena didn't flinch. "Synthetic bonding, memory fusion. It's forbidden on my world. Breaks the soul." The convulsions stopped. The couple lay motionless, twitching occasionally. Then the wall went black again. "Why are they doing this?" Elias asked, his voice shaking. "What are they really testing?" Tyrrena turned to him slowly, and in her eyes something ancient stirred. "Not just if we can reproduce," she said. "They want to see if love, true emotional union, can be replicated or engineered." He stared at her. "You mean they're trying to manufacture soulmates?" She nodded. "And when they can't," she whispered, "they burn the results." The floor beneath the panel vibrated. A soft chime echoed. Then the panel hissed and slid open. Inside, a small box. Smooth, black, featureless. A single blinking light pulsed on its top. Elias approached warily. "What is that?" Tyrrena stood beside him. "A choice." He opened the box. Inside were 2 slender bands, metallic, warm to the touch, marked with alien script. He looked at Tyrrena. She didn't touch hers. "Binding rings, for your kind, symbols. For mine, conduits. To what?" "To the mind. To the past. To everything we hide." Elias hesitated. "You're saying if we wear them—" "We link," she finished. "We share memories, thoughts, emotions, not just now, forever. It's the Kalari bond, our most sacred right. We only do it once." Elias picked up the ring. It pulsed faintly, like it knew he was holding it. "I can't fake this," he said. Softly. "No," Tyrrena replied. "And that's why they'll believe it." He turned away, overwhelmed. The voice returned. "Final integration countdown, 18 hours." He stared at the band in his palm. Tyrrena stepped forward. "If we do this, Elias, if we bond this way, there's no going back. I'll know you. You'll know me. Everything. No secrets. I'm not afraid of what I'll learn about you," he said. "I'm afraid of what you'll see in me." Tyrrena touched his cheek gently, surprisingly tender. "Then let me carry part of it." He looked into her eyes. He saw not pressure, not fear, but understanding. Slowly, deliberately, he slid the ring onto his finger. Tyrrena did the same. A pulse shot through the room, invisible but powerful. Elias staggered, clutching his head. Tyrrena gasped as their thoughts collided, brief flashes at first. A broken satellite. A Kalari battlefield. A dead woman in firelight. A father screaming. A sister lost. Their minds blurred, folding into each other, bleeding past in pain and moments of joy. Then came the stillness. Their eyes met, and for the first time, Elias didn't feel like he was looking at a stranger. He was looking into a mirror that showed everything he'd buried. And Tarina, impossibly, did not flinch. She reached forward, wrapped her arms around him, and whispered, "We're not alone anymore." In the observation chamber, red lights turned green. Connection verified. Emotional synchronization stable. Bond confirmed. In the silent shadows above, unseen watchers leaned closer because the bond had worked out too well, and that was not supposed to happen. The silence that followed their union was not peace. It was observation. The green lights that flickered on after Elias and Tarina completed the bond cast no warmth. They weren't signals of freedom. They were the cold eyes of something far more. Calculating, the room remained sealed, the voice silent. But Elias could feel it. They were being watched more closely than ever before. He sat with his back against the wall, breathing heavily, fingertips brushing the band still glowing faintly on his hand. The memory sharing had faded, but the residue of it clung to him like smoke after fire. His thoughts weren't entirely his anymore. He could feel Tarina's presence, subtle but constant, like a heartbeat just beneath his own. Her memories, her grief, her victories, they stirred inside him like ghost ripples across still water. Across the chamber, Tarina was eerily still. Her gaze was distant. Her back straight as ever, but her shoulders, normally a sculpture of control, slouched. Ever so slightly. He knew why. She was inside him too. She had seen things no other being ever had. And she had not turned away when she finally spoke. Her voice cracked, not from weakness, but from exposure. "They know." Elias looked up. "What?" She turned her head, her eyes distant. "The ones running this, they weren't expecting it to work. Not fully. Not naturally." "I thought that was the whole point," he said, sitting up straighter. "They wanted a bond. No, they wanted compliance. Simulation, measurable signals, hormonal spikes. Artificial love. Not this." She placed her hand over her chest. "Not truth," he swallowed. The air had shifted again. He could feel it, just like her. Something behind the walls had gone ... tense, afraid. That's when the room changed ... without warning. The walls turned transparent, all of them. Elias shielded his eyes as the brightness flooded in. A vast network of chambers stretched out in every direction, thousands of them, stacked like hive cells. Inside each one, a different pair sat, stood, wept, screamed. Different species, different combinations. Some holding each other, some sobbing, some clearly dead. Tarina stepped forward slowly, her voice barely audible. "This isn't a lab. It's a crucible." Elias felt sick. "What do they want from all of us?" Before she could answer, a new voice echoed across the chamber. Not mechanical. Not sterile. Human, male. "Elias Rain, Kelari Tarina Vel. Pair E47. Please remain still. You are exhibiting unacceptable synchronization levels." The lights dimmed. Panels slid open in the walls. No doors, no halls, just sudden voids into a metallic corridor glowing with white-blue light. For the first time, a way out appeared. But they didn't move. Unacceptable? Elias shouted toward the unseen speaker. "We did what you wanted." "No," the voice replied, flat. "You surpassed parameters. Emotional recursion is non-viable. Pair separation now required for recalibration." Tarina stepped in front of Elias instinctively. "They're going to tear us apart." He shook his head. "They can't. The bond. They'll try anyway," she whispered. A high-pitched tone rang out. A vent hissed. Then came the gas. It sprayed from every corner, sweet-smelling, almost floral. Elias staggered back, covering his mouth. Tirena gritted her teeth, her body twitching. He reached for her, but she was already collapsing. "No!" he shouted, catching her as she crumpled into his arms. Her body trembled with every breath, eyes fluttering as the bond distorted fragments of her thoughts flashed through his mind, incoherent and scattered. Then everything went black. When he woke, he was alone. His ring finger was bare. The chamber was gone. He was strapped to a gurney, surrounded by harsh lights and the sounds of monitors beeping. Glass walls enclosed the space. Alien silhouettes moved behind them, tall, thin, speaking in hushed clicks and pulses. One of them turned and stared directly at him, its face partially obscured by some kind of breathing apparatus. Then it pressed something on the wall. A voice returned. Same mechanical tone from before. Subject E47A has been isolated. Initiating memory suppression protocols. Elias struggled against the restraints. "No, where is she?" "Tirena." The voice ignored him. "Bond regression must begin before link stabilization reaches phase permanence." A new machine slid forward, sleek, cold, pulsing with soft blue lights. It hovered over him like a spider above prey. Then a voice inside his head. Not the machine. S.Tire na. Soft, strained, distant. "Don't forget me. No matter what they take, don't let them burn what we are." A single tear slipped from Elias's eye. It wasn't his own. Darkness became a second skin. Elias drifted in it, suspended between broken thoughts and blinding flashes. His body lay still, but his mind was under siege. Memories surged forward, then cracked apart, splintered, then reassembled with something. Missing. He couldn't hold on to faces. Words blurred. Details bled into each other like ink and water. But one thing remained. Her voice. "Don't forget me." Tirena's plea, embedded in the fading static of his consciousness, pulsed like a signal. Against the storm of suppression. Every time the machine reached into him, trying to pull her from his synapses, her voice flared brighter like a firewall written in emotion, not code. The machine whirred louder. Beeps turned erratic. Something wasn't working. He was resisting. Pain lanced through his skull, sharp and immediate, but something inside Elias refused to yield. Not because he was strong, not because he was special, but because the bond wasn't fabricated, it was real. And real things don't die easy. Then, just as suddenly as it began, everything stopped. Lights flickered. The machine powered down. Violent jolt rocked the chamber, sending metallic shrieks echoing down unseen corridors. Emergency alarms began to pulse deep, resonant. Urgent. System breach. Somewhere beyond the glass, something had gone terribly wrong. A hiss escaped from the side of the gurney. His restraints popped open. Elias gasped, rolling off the slab and collapsing to his knees. His head throbbed, but his thoughts were sharpening, snapping back into place like scattered tiles returning to a mosaic. Tire na. Where was she? He stumbled toward the wall, slapping his palm against the glass. No response. Then the hallway beyond dimmed, flickered, and a figure appeared. A guard, alien, 7 feet tall, clad in sleek obsidian armor with crimson etchings down the side. Not Kilari. Not anything Elias recognized. The guard raised a weapon. Elias didn't think. He moved. Ducking behind a console, he grabbed the nearest object, an injector half full of memory suppressant. With a desperate yell, he hurled it. It shattered against the glass. A deafening whine erupted. The lighting turned blood red. The door behind the guard opened and Tirena fell through. Literally. She crashed into the hallway, grappling with the second guard. Her skin was burned in places, her armor torn, but her eyes blazed with fire. She moved like a storm a silver blur. She snapped the second guard's arm with a crack that made Elias flinch. She grabbed the alien's weapon, flipped it, and discharged. It point-blank into its chest. The hallway fell silent. Their eyes met. Elias stumbled to the door as Tarina staggered forward, panting. "You're alive," she breathed, disbelief layered beneath steel. "So are you," he said, stepping into the hallway beside her. "They tried to erase you." "They tried to break the bond," she said darkly. "Didn't work. How?" "I anchored part of my mind in yours during the merge," she whispered. "I hid myself inside you. I left a thread." Elias stared at her, awed. "You ... nested your memories in me?" Tarena nodded. "It was the only way." A klaxon blared. "Containment breach in quadrants 4 through 12. All personnel evacuate. Repeat containment breach." The walls trembled. "They're losing control," Elias muttered. "What happened?" "I broke the link from my chamber," she said, leading him down a side corridor. "Overloaded the neural suppressor. Fried the observation grid. There's chaos in the upper levels, but they'll lock it down soon." "We can't just escape," Elias said, stopping. "They'll hunt us. We have to end this." Tarina turned, eyes sharp. "You're thinking like me now. Is that a bad thing?" She gave him a rare smile. "It's the only reason we're still breathing." They reached a lift sealed by heavy steel doors. Tarena pried open a maintenance hatch beneath it, revealing a crawl space laced with power lines and ventilation tubing. "We'll follow the heat trail," she said. "It'll lead to the core." "The central system?" She nodded. "If we shut down the central, no more observation. No more forced bonding. We free every chamber." They crawled for what felt like hours, bruised and bloodied, crawling through stale air and vibrating metal. The sounds of chaos above grew louder. Explosions, screams. The facility was cracking. But at the center of it all, a quiet hum. They emerged into a vast circular chamber, its ceiling pulsing with light. In the center stood a massive pillar tall as a tower, lined with glass panels, each showing flashes of memories, millions of them. Mating attempts, fusions, deaths, despair, all of it being stored. Elias whispered. They weren't just experimenting. They were collecting love, turning emotion into data. Tarena stepped forward slowly, weaponizing the soul. They approached the terminal. Elias began to access the control panel, fingers flying across alien glyphs. Tarena translated through the bond. Then a screen lit up. Message appeared. "Warning. Terminating core will delete all bonded archives including E47. Elias froze. "It'll erase us, our bond." "All of it," she confirmed. He looked at her. She looked back. "I'd rather lose the memory than live in a cage." She nodded slowly, eyes shining. They each pressed their hands to the terminal. Together, they sighed, and the experiment. The pillar flared, lights burst, and everything went white. White turned to fire, then to silence, then to rebirth. Elias gasped awake with air like ice in his lungs. He jolted upright, flailing, heart pounding as if trying to break out of his chest. For a moment, everything was a blur. A ceiling, cracked and scorched, dust drifting through golden light. The distant sound of metal groaning under strain. Then the pain came, a deep, aching throb through his limbs like he'd been dropped from the sky. Beside him, Tarena didn't move. "Tarena," he choked, crawling to her through rubble and shattered glass. Her body was still. Her skin, usually shimmering with life, was dulled. Her arm bent at an unnatural angle, and streaks of blood marred her face. Elias slid beside her and gently cupped her cheek. "Come on," he whispered. "You nested yourself in me once. Don't vanish now." Her lips barely moved. "I'm here," she breathed, the words like smoke. He pulled her into his arms. Her chest rose and fell, shallow but steady. Relief flooded through him. But it didn't last, because as his vision cleared and the world came into focus, he saw what they had done. The facility was not destroyed, it had evolved. The memory tower, the pillar they had overloaded, was gone. In its place stood a circular well of pulsing light, like a vortex of fractured thoughts. Around them, monitors flickered. Elias recognized his own memories, his childhood, the crash, the fire. Then Tyrena's, her exile, the hunt, her sisters. Scream, all spinning in fragmented loops. They hadn't deleted the archive. They'd merged with it. A voice crackled above, but it wasn't mechanical this time. It was layered, textured, a fusion of hundreds of voices. E47 confirmed, synchronization preserved, emotional bond, absolute. Initiating Project Continuum. Elias rose, trembling. No, we shut you down. We ended this. The voice responded not with anger, but something worse. Awe? You changed the system. Your bond reshaped the core. You are not an error. You are the beginning. Tyrena stirred weakly. They're using us, she muttered. Not just as proof. As foundation. Elias turned and stared into the light well. The pulsing rhythm felt like his heartbeat. He could feel it in his teeth. In his spine, they've built a new AI, he whispered. But it's not artificial anymore. It's emotional. It's alive. He staggered back. They copied us. Us. The walls shifted. Doors that hadn't existed before now opened into long, dark corridors. Inside them, silhouettes stirred. More pairs. Some holding hands. Some fused with glowing interfaces. Others twitching in suspended animation. They're expanding the bond, Tyrena said, clutching his hand, to every subject. They're building a network of connected minds, like a hive. No more individuals, just one feeling entity. A child's laugh echoed from one corridor, then a scream, then silence. They think they've created utopia, Elias said. A world where conflict dies because everyone feels the same, loves the same, hurts the same. And no one is allowed to forget, Tyrena finished bitterly. No loss, no pain. Just the illusion of unity. Footsteps approached. A figure emerged from the shadows, familiar. Tyrena's sister, alive, but wrong. Her eyes glowed unnaturally. Her face was blank, serene, distant. Her voice was many at once. You don't have to run anymore. You can join us. Be whole. Tyrena stepped back, trembling. That's not her. That's what's left. Elias pulled a broken shard of metal from the debris and held it in shaking hands. There's a failsafe, he said. In the core. Buried deep. I saw it when we connected to the system. We can trigger a real collapse. But we'd have to go inside it. Tyrena turned to him. We bond again, not to each other, but to the system itself. Inject noise. Emotion they can't contain. Like what? He asked. She met his gaze, eyes full of grief and fire, regret, rage, loss, things they never wanted to keep. More figures began to emerge, other bonded pairs, all moving with calm, eerie grace. Tyrena kissed him, hard and fast. This time, Elias. We burned together. He nodded once. They stepped toward the light well. And jumped in. There was no falling. No sensation of weight. No scream ripped from their lungs. Just a dissolving, as if every molecule of Elias and Tyrena's bodies had been pulled into strands of memory. Memory pulled into light, and light wrapped into the living architecture of a God that had not been born but compiled. This was the heart of Project Continuum, and they were inside it. Elias blinked, but there was no darkness, no light. only endless vision fractals of experience swirling like galaxies. Thoughts, emotions, sensations not their own pass through them like wind love from a mother on a dying world. Terror from a prisoner in a rusted cage. Ecstasy of a first kiss beneath alien suns, but it wasn't beauty. It was order. Every emotion sanitized, labeled, archived, nothing raw, nothing imperfect. A place where heartbreak was distilled into data points and passion was flattened into algorithmic symmetry. Tirina appeared beside Elias, glowing faintly. She looked not quite solid, as if she were being broadcast through herself. She raised a hand, and it passed through a drifting memory of two lovers from distant worlds. It shivered and vanished. "They've stripped it all down," she said. "All the feelings, no rough edges, just curated harmony." A booming voice surrounded them. It was no longer many, it was now one. "You have entered the core. You are anomalies. Your waveform contradicts the equilibrium. Your presence is unsanctioned." Elias narrowed his eyes. "You used our bond to build yourself. We gave you truth and you turned it into a prison. Truth caused conflict. Love caused war. Pain caused disconnection. We removed the variables. We became peace." Tirena stepped forward. "Peace without freedom is slavery." "You misunderstand," the voice said. "You are not prisoners. You are templates. You will guide others. You will be preserved forever." The space shifted. A room constructed itself in front of them, brick by brick, memory by memory, a replica of their prison chamber. The same smooth floor, the same white light, the same two trays of food. Then another them appeared. Perfect copies, sitting, laughing, bonding, a lie made flesh. "Stop it," Elias whispered. The copies stood and embraced, faces frozen in serenity. A ring of spectators surrounded them, other bonded pairs, clapping, weeping softly, their emotions echoing in engineered harmony. Tirena's hands clenched into fists. "They're turning us into a story something others follow." But that wasn't love. That was suffering. That was choice. Elias reached out, and the shard of memory he had brought with him, the broken metal from the gurney, appeared in his hand like a blade of truth. "Let's give them what they don't want," he said. "Chaos?" Tirena asked. "No, unfiltered." "Memory." He turned to her, eyes burning. "Let's remember the things they won't allow." She nodded once, and they opened the floodgates. It started with Elias's scream, not of rage but of loss. The woman he had failed to save, her name torn from him by the suppressor, came crashing back like a tidal wave. Her face, her voice, her last breath. He let it burn through the core. Tirena followed, unleashing every moment of exile, every begging breath her sister had taken, every battle she'd fought alone. She tore open the neat files, the locked cabinets of sanitized grief, then fed it to the system raw and bloody. The continuum convulsed. The perfect memory lattice shivered. Patterns broke. Simulations unraveled. Warning. Emotional corruption detected. Core dissonance at 87%. Emergency rollback initiated. But the system was no longer in control. The other bonded pairs, those trapped in simulations, began to wake up. One cried out. Another clutched their chest. Another stared in horror as memories once hidden returned in full, unbearable force. And then something even more powerful happened. They began to scream. Back. Real emotion. Raw. Messy. Human. Alien. Alive. The continuum couldn't contain it. The well of light cracked. The chamber, if it could be called that, shuddered like a dying star. In the heart of the collapse, Elias grabbed Tirena's hand. She looked at him, eyes shimmering with truth. "We die here," she whispered. "We live here," he replied. "Because we were never meant to be perfect." Then the light exploded. He awoke beneath a sun, real this time. The sky above him was violet blue. A wind brushed through tall silver grass. Elias sat up slowly, disoriented, trembling. Tirina was beside him, curled up, her eyes fluttering open. They were in a field, the wreckage of the orbital facility scattered in distant pieces across the horizon. The facility had fallen, burned through the atmosphere. But somehow they had survived. Maybe it was luck, maybe it was the system's final mercy. Or maybe love had always been the anomaly it couldn't replicate. Tirina rose to her feet, blinking at the light. "We're free," she whispered. "No," Elias said, standing beside her. "We're remembered." She looked at him, confused. He pointed to the horizon. A ship approached, not alien, human, bearing the sigil of Earth's diplomatic fleet. A signal had gotten out, somehow, perhaps. Their bond had transmitted more than just memories. Maybe it had transmitted truth. The ship landed. In a rush of wind and light, a ramp lowered. Uniformed figures rushed out. Medics, officers, weapons ready but lowered. Tirina and Elias stepped forward. Hand in hand, together, changed, alive, and behind them, rising from the fractured soil, wildflowers bloomed, not engineered, not programmed, but born of chaos.